What's happening, sports fans? Welcome back to another episode with Mama and Papa Joe. Today is something different. We're going to do a detailed brisket cook. This video is going to be a little bit longer than it normally is because I'm going to go into some serious details. I'm going to call this one tips for better briskets. Let's get right into it. Most important thing about brisket selection, folks, is to shop early. Do not wait until the day of your cook or a couple of days before your cook, because that means you're going to have to settle on a brisket. I shop even when I'm not planning on cooking. I'm looking for a brisket. That way I get the best brisket possible. So as you get to your store, your market, and you start looking for briskets, here are some of the things I immediately want to look for. I want to go to the cut edge of the flat and look for marbling. If I can see marbling in the flat, F-L-A-T, I know that I'm going to have some decent fat content as we move up the brisket. Also want a brisket that's going to be fairly even in thickness from the flat end to the point end. That way I won't have to trim as much. It won't be as much waste, and it will promote even cooking. Here's a brisket I wouldn't buy. As you look at the flat, you can see how thin it is. All that flat, all that fat. And as you move up, you still can't see any. Versus this brisket, where you can see the difference in the flat as you move upwards towards the point. So this is a brisket I'd stay away from. It's heavy, but you're paying for a lot of waste. You're going to end up doing a lot of trimming. Next thing I want to look for is marbling deeper into the flat. If you don't know anything about a brisket, two muscles. You've got a point, which is the fatty end, and the flat, which is leaner. They're separated by a seam of fat in between the two. The flat grain runs one way or the other, and the point grain is usually going to run across, opposite of the flat. So you've got two different directions the grain is running, and we'll get more into that as we move forward. This is a Walmart shopping area, folks. When you're buying choice or a select, one of the things I will do with those briskets is I will age those briskets in my refrigerator. It really helps. And when I say aging, I'm going to keep it in the original cryovac, and I'm going to place it in a refrigerator that's dedicated for my meats. You don't want a refrigerator that the kids are going to be running in and out of every 5 minutes to get a juice box. And I will let this sit in that original packaging for 21 to 28 days. And that brisket starts to break down in its natural juices, and it ends up in a more tender product. We're going to get more into that as we get to trimming. All right, here's our brisket for the day. It's an 18-pound prime. Looks fairly decent in the package. It's been in my fridge, give or take 21 days. We're going to get this to the sink, get it rinsed and dried off. Pretty nice looking brisket. And folks, if you're not a brisket trimmer, you're not a fan of trimming, by all means, continue doing what you're doing if it works for you. But there are lots of reasons for trimming, man. I do not like cooking anything that I'm not going to eat. And I'm not going to eat all that fat that comes on a brisket. Besides, I don't want to waste fuel cooking something I'm not going to eat. I don't want to waste seasonings on something I'm not going to eat. Trimming a brisket will shorten your cooking time. It will allow your brisket to cook more evenly. Fat is flavor. I know a lot of you really say that and live by that, but you don't need a whole lot of fat for flavor. It gives it that silky mouthfeel. It adds moisture. You've never heard anybody say, this brisket has too much flavor. But yes, they will say it has too much fat. First thing I want to do is to just remove this thick, what I call a fat pad. Our goal is going to be to try to level this end, the point end, to the flat end as best as possible. You don't have to remove any silver skin. I like to do it for visual purposes, but other than that, it's not a problem. As I'm removing the silver skin, I'm keeping my knife blade pointed upwards to make sure I'm not gouging into this piece of meat. I like placing my hands underneath and pushing up in the areas that I am working on. You're going to find fat veins like this. You don't chase them, you're going to create a bit of a trench. So that's perfect. I'm going to be working around this corner, so I'm not worried about any fat or silver skin that might be on this thin end of the flat. Grain of our brisket is running in this direction. So anytime I make a cut on either end, I want to try to make the cut along with the grain. It might not be 100%, but I want to make sure it's somewhat with the grain. Beautiful. First thing we're going to do is get rid of this mohawk. We're looking for about a 1/4 inch of fat right here, folks. You can see how much fat we've got to remove. Then we want to come back with our kitchen shears, and we're going to start rounding off these very edges. All right, this should get us done right here, folks. I'm happy with this. All our edges are rounded. Let's get ready for seasoning. I've got here just a little bit left over from a previous cook, kosher salt and black pepper. Today I wanted to use black pepper and Lawry's. So I'm not going to waste this. I'm just going to add to this 3 tablespoons of 16 mesh. And you're looking for a granular, actually I'm going to go 4 tablespoons. And then 2 tablespoons of the Lawry's seasoned salt. Give that a good shake. And that's going to be it for our seasoning. Because this is going on the pit, fat side up, I'm seasoning the meat side first. And based on how dry your meat is, this is fairly dry. This is what I'm going to be spritzing with if I spritz today. Just vinegar and water. Just add a little moisture to help your rub stick. This liquid also provides some moisture for the creation of the smoke ring. And we'll come back with that rub we just made. I like placing it in my hands on the side, pressing in. And folks, don't be afraid to apply this heavily. This is a fairly long cook, a fairly thick piece of meat. This black pepper will cook out. It will mellow. And seasoning the top, the higher up you can drop from, the more even a spread you make. All right, we'll give this a flip. And we're going to do the same thing on this back side, our presentation side. Seasoning day of the cook versus the evening before is a personal preference. I have grown pretty accustomed to seasoning the day of. I really don't see a difference. All right, we're going to call this good. We're going to head outside and get our pit fired up. All right, our pit temperature is at 210 degrees, and I'm going to put it on early as we climb to 275. The earlier, the better, because you're going to get some good smoke when you put it on this early. You know where the sweet spot is on your pit. I'm going to go with the point towards the firebox. Once you drop that brisket, you want to make sure it is positioned in the shape that you want it to cook, because after 5-10 minutes, it's pretty much set. My heat source is on this side of the pit, so the point is towards that side. In a little while into this cook, I'll probably foil here and here because of the heat that's going through the exhaust and the heat from the firebox. It's going to cook a little faster than other areas. I'm fat side up because the heat kind of flows over this brisket. Your pit will determine whether or not you want to go fat side up or down. Where's your heat coming from, below or above? We're not going to do anything with this for another 2 hours or so. We'll come back and take a look. This is a 3-hour mark, and our pit is still running nicely. Let's see what we've got going. I checked this at 2 hours, and there was nothing to report. We're looking pretty good here. I spoke earlier of putting a piece of foil on each end, and now is the time. I'm still not going to do anything in terms of spritzing. This fat seam right here is starting to render nicely. We're getting a little puddling right there, a little curling, but that's not a problem. And again, this is only to protect it from the heat from the firebox and that bounce back heat from the exhaust. What we're looking is to start seeing this fat rendering. juices flowing as this brisket loses moisture. So this is how I start my fire. I place my charcoals a little closer to the door as opposed to the chamber because the pit draws pretty hard. And then I'm just going to light these charcoal and give them about 10 or so minutes to get going on their own before I start adding some mini sticks. All right, we're going to give that about 5 to 10 minutes and come back and drop a stick. All right, once we're satisfied that our charcoal is going nicely, we're going to come back with just some very small pieces to quickly build up this bed of coals. Once that gets to flaming, I'll close the door and start the preheating process. All right, our mini sticks are caught. Let's get our door closed and adjust the vent. We're going to try to get this stuck on 275. Your pit is your pit, so you know that better than I do. But I try to do all of your adjustments here to control temperature. All right, folks, let's check fire. All right, we kind of lost a little bit of coal bed. We've still got a nice log burning. When that happens, folks, you come back with some smaller pieces, all right, to quickly get a bed of coals going. And that won't take very long. All right, let's check on that coal bed. And folks, just from those 3 small pieces, man, we are right back where we need to be. And now we just come back and continue our maintenance with a nice small stick to maintain that 275. Easy peasy. 4-hour mark, folks. Let's see what's happening. All right, now you can see that we've got some nice rendering going on. This fat is starting to soften. I see it breaking down, a little split here in the fat. We've got some pooling. The brisket curled up just a little bit, and that's what's causing that pooling right there. That is not a problem. We've got a fix for that. All right, with that pooling, it will not allow your bark to set. So what I'm going to do is just take a piece of aluminum foil rolled up, and I am going to, in an effort, there you go. You can see it starting to run off. And that area where that bark was soft is moving a little bit of our rub, but that's not a problem. Still not ready for a spritz. You got to keep in mind that spritzing is not a must. It's only when that brisket needed. If some areas are getting dark really fast, then you might want to keep a little moisture on there in an effort to prevent it from drying and burning, getting too hard. But other than that, we're just going to continue rocking as this brisket continues to lose moisture. I want you to keep in mind that before wrapping, this brisket has to lose about 20% of the moisture in it. A brisket, the muscles in a brisket is approximately 75% water. And we've got to lose about 20 to 25% of that water before we can wrap. Otherwise, it's going to destroy our bark in that wrap. Keep rocking. 5-hour mark, folks. I'm loving this color. All right, we're still losing moisture, still losing that water, but our color is where I need it to be. This fat is so soft. I push on it, man. I just see juices coming out. I think we are pretty close to where I want to be for a wrap. All right, we're pushing 173. I like to wrap between 170 and 180. All right, you'll hear others say 160, 165, that's fine. But I like to lose a little more of that water that I spoke of before I wrap. All right, flat says 187. So we're so close to finishing. I'm going to do a foil boat, and we're going to talk about wrapping. So this brisket has lost that water that I wanted, and now is a great time to wrap. So folks, there are a couple of different ways you can wrap a brisket if you choose to wrap. You've got paper, you've got foil. Pros and cons to both foil and paper. Foil will speed up your cooking, but it will also soften this bark. It will sap your color. It will give you a pretty nice brisket, but the texture can be a little softer. Paper will prevent all that and will also speed up your cooking, but your bark will get a little soft as well. What I'm doing here is the best of both worlds. I am going to do a combination of both with this foil boat. So you just want this foil hugging the brisket, protecting those edges, and we'll continue working on this soft spot. So this foil boat will also speed up your cooking. It will allow the bark to continue developing. So it's the best of both paper and foil. And this is all there is to it. It's going back on the pit. Still want that liquid to roll off. I think it might be another hour to hour and a half or so. 6 hour march, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what we're working with. I am telling you, man, this pit is so easy to control. Temperature, fire management. We're looking good. As you can see, our little wet area has dried nicely, and you can see where some of the seasonings moved as it ran off. A little puddling over here. Oh, this feels great. And I'm seeing moisture as I push down. We are not very far away, within an hour, maybe another 45 minutes. All right, I'm starting to see a little crumbling over here of the bark. All right, so what I want to do now, my first little bit of spritzing. I don't want water, liquid running off of here, but I want to just soften that a little bit as we finish this brisket. We're going to just keep rocking at 275. 7 hours and 15 minutes, folks. Now, to determine a finished brisket, folks, do not ever set your sights on a given temperature. You need to develop a feel for what a finished brisket feels like. This thing is probing nicely, man, all across. Folks, this is probing nicely, man, in that flat 207, 208. I'm going to call this good. We're going to get this off of here for a rest. So again, very important that you develop a feel for what a finished brisket feels like and not depend on a temperature. Let's get this inside. There are a number of different ways you can rest your brisket. You can rest it in foil. You can rest it in paper. You can rest it on the countertop. You can rest it in a cooler. So many different ways. Today, I'm just going to put it in a cold oven. What I've got here is some beef tallow. This butcher paper is going to breathe a little bit. This tallow, while not doing anything for flavor, will provide some moisture, soften that bark that may have gotten a little crunchy. This tallow also softens the paper, makes it a little easier to fold as we wrap this brisket. This brisket feels pretty good, almost like my fingers could go through it. So I'm fat down. I'm going to tuck this underneath. Good fold. And folks, I'm just going to place this on a sheet pan and probably just drape a towel over it so that it cools down slowly. Resting your brisket is one of the most important steps in finishing a brisket. This gives the brisket the chance to relax, to reabsorb those very thin juices. The hotter the juices, the thinner they are. As the brisket cools down, those juices tend to thicken up, coagulate a little bit, and remain in the meat when sliced. If you slice this hot, those thin juices just come flowing out. So we're going to give this a rest for, give or take, 3 good hours in the oven. This oven is well insulated. And like I said, I will have it covered with a towel. All right, here we are, folks. It's been right around 3 hours, man. Our brisket is temping right around 155 degrees. So now is a great time to slice. Let's see what we got going. Let's talk slicing a brisket. So many different ways to slice a brisket, man. We can do restaurant style. And I did not slice briskets that way until I started doing videos. Prior to that, I always sliced my briskets all the way this direction. But now, you know, I do the halfway thing, turn it, the whole 9 yards. It's totally up to you. Sometimes the brisket barks up and you can't remember which direction the grain. Always remember that the grain runs in the direction of the thickest part of the flat. And I've never seen a brisket where it does not. The thickest part of the flat. That's the direction that the grain is running. So I know absolutely where I need to start. Oh, this brisket feels so good. Not a bad looking slice right there. Nice little ring. Easy pull. And it's tasty. Nice and tender.
Nice bark. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. That is so soft. Nice. So we can see how the grain runs in opposite direction. So now we're going to turn and we want to slice against this grain. This grain is running this direction. This one is running up and down. This one is running across. So we're going to turn and we're going to start slicing the point against the grain.
Oh my goodness. Mm-mm-mm.
Folks, you talk about jellified. This is pure jelly right here. That is pure jelly. Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. Absolutely. So that is all there is to it, folks. This is my favorite part of the brisket right here, man. Mm, mm, mm. So tender.
Mm-mm.
Mm, mm, mm. Folks, I'm telling you, this fat right here is so rendered, man. It's delicious. That was not very difficult, folks. Pretty straightforward. It's a lot of information. I know it's a long video. We don't normally do them this long, but there was a lot of information I wanted to give you guys. I hope you got something out of this. If you didn't, let me know. If you did, I also want to know that. Thank you so much for watching. Mom and I really appreciate it. Be on the lookout for another video coming very soon. And as usual, Mom and I want you guys to take care of yourselves, love each other, and we'll see you when we see you. Holla.